This will be a short talk. What they said. Thank you. Good night. Oh, boy. My name is Peter, recovered alcoholic.
Hi, Peter.
Grateful to be here, and really happy to share with Marion. We get to do this every so often. It's always a treat for me, and thank you, Bob and Linda, for sharing with such transparency as well. And I will tell everyone, Marion and I have never spoken on this topic, relationships. Part of me feels I need to protect and not be that transparent. And there's another part of me that's saying, just let God do what He's going to do. So we prayed on how do you present a topic on a relationship, because the last thing, I speak for myself, I want to do is give someone the impression, especially a new person, that, with a model of how to have a relationship. I haven't seen a book on how to have a relationship. The only people who get rich from that is the author. Everyone else goes in divorce court when you follow one of those books. So, and Bob was talking about models and his dad. Like me, my dad has been a hero of mine for the longest time, albeit when I was growing up, we were arch enemies. We just didn't get along, but since I've been in sobriety, I've gotten to see the humanness in him, and he's been an absolute hero. And I looked at his life and the circumstances and the terrible deck of cards he was dealt and how he's able to overcome adversity. But when it comes to relationships with my dad and my dad's side of the family, and I look at my mom's side of the family, there's really not a model to look up to, because everyone's been divorced 2 and 3 times, almost to the point where, it's just very matter of fact. And so where do you learn how to have relationships? By your friends hanging out on a street corner. And growing up in Brooklyn is not exactly the training ground for spiritual growth on how to have a relationship. So I've made a ton of mistakes. And I was sharing with Tommy earlier that most of my growth, not only in relationships, with everything, has been through making lots of mistakes. And God giving me something to, how do I not do that again, and ask questions. And I guess what I'm getting moved to talk about is something that happened very recently with Marion and I, and for me it kind of sums up how we do this thing. I'm a cradle Catholic, and Marion converted to Catholicism a few years ago, and it's been great. We're regular attendees at our Sunday Mass, and we gave service there for a number of years. And per my old sponsor and per church, we wanted to get married, and we had to do something called an annulment proceeding. And if anyone's ever done that, it's just forever. And we got refused, and it's been this 4-year debacle. And I'm 62. Marion will be 62. We've been dating a number of years. We've been engaged for a number of years. And it's this thing, when do we get married? When do we get married? And I felt I was going to commit this awful sin that God, the floor was going to open, God's going to send me to hell if I got married outside of my church. And those are just old belief systems that became suffocating. So, Marion and I do what we do often. We had a talk. And we're safe enough. This is what I really love about being with Marion. Safe enough to share what I'm feeling at that moment without being condemned or criticized. Comforted rather than condemned or criticized. Helpful rather than being hurtful. And hopefully centered in God rather than me centered. And so Marion came to me, and we went back and forth, and we made a prayer. And we both came to our little conclusion that our intent was pure. And I'm sure God would be pleased that we're going to get married in one of His houses. And so we make this decision, this together decision, that we're going to get married, which is what we both wanted for the long time. And now that we made the decision, it's kind of like, well, my sponsor says, well, it's about time you're doing it, Everyone's reaction is, well, it's about time, you know. And now I'm looking at it, I said to myself, you know, it's about time you did this. What we're able to do, her and I, is, and again, I want to stress this, we don't have this perfect relationship. For me, it's perfect. For me, she's ideal. Marion is a type of woman I would see people on TV and says, how do you find somebody like that? That's fairy tale land. And after this old relationship that I was in, and I swore to myself, I'm never, ever, ever, ever going out with women again. I'm never getting in a relationship again. I'm done. And just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Respect, honesty, transparency, humility. And for me, I just need to be able to create, if you will, an environment for Marion to come to me, knowing that something she says may get me upset, but safe enough to do that with me. I don't believe, I used to, based on how I grew up and the information I was given, believe that as the man of the family, I had to have leverage at all times. And that my decision was the final decision. And I find that doesn't work. That just creates people going in two different directions and creates an environment where she won't talk to me or I'm afraid to talk to her. So for us, what we're able to do, and I'm so grateful to God for this, is create an environment where we can just talk. Marion will take the lead on Monday, I'll take the lead on Tuesday. I've gotten to a place on this journey in this relationship where my ego doesn't want to tell Marion certain things, like I'm afraid. My business was about to close a couple of years ago, and I can't tell Marion we're going to be broke, and what do I do now? Because the male ego says, well, I'll go out and steal first to bring home money to keep her out of harm's way. And that life doesn't work for me anymore. And I sat down with Marion and said, we're in trouble again. And when you do that, it's unbelievable how comforting people are and how they can take the lead. Honey, we're going to be okay. And she reminded me of, isn't God in charge of our life? And there was one particular day, this facility, I'm in the treatment center business. I know that's not popular, say in some rooms of AA, but that's what I do for a living. And this new place opened up in South Florida, and they invited me to go to their grand opening, yeah? And I had just checked my bank account because the rent was due the following week, and I realized I can't pay the rent. And I need to call Marion and say, I don't know how we're going to make this month. And I go to this treatment center, and they give me, hey, how are you? And so good to see you. And they're throwing basically roses at me. And most people would feel pretty good that they went. Geez, I went to this thing. I feel so much better. I'll figure out that I'm feeling like I'm just ready to crawl out from under a rock. And I went home, and I sat with Marion. I was pretty emotional. I felt like I failed her as a partner. I failed her as a man. I failed her as a financial support person, that we didn't have money to pay the rent. And what Marion did was convince me we will pay the rent and we'll be okay. So many times when I'm walking with head up and shoulders square, she's got her arms around me doing that for me. And when I'm happy to report to you that I can do that for her as well. And it happens because I don't believe in a family that has to have this captain of the ship all the time. That's not a partnership. It's really important for me to be active in Alcoholics Anonymous. See, if I'm not okay with you, it's because I'm not okay with me. And if I'm not okay with me, it's because I'm not okay with God. Which means no matter what she does is not good. And no matter what I accomplish is never going to be okay. And if I'm still operating out of that old wounded me, I'm operating out of there, I'm seeing out of it, I'm hearing out of it, I'm speaking out of it. How could I possibly have a quote-unquote healthy, emotionally intimate relationship with anyone, let alone Marion? I can't. Because when she says, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep, what I would hear is, I'm leaving you. Let's go for a walk on the beach, honey. I don't like the beach. She's leaving me because that's operating out of the old place rather than, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. That's one of the reasons why there's a great word in traditions, autonomous, self-governing, and independent, that Marion can still have her own life, and I'm not in stalking mode when she's doing it. And I can have my own life, and she's not in stalking mode when I'm doing it. Whether I'm traveling to a conference and I can't afford to buy her the ticket to come with me, or she's going to speak and she's just going to be at an all-women's conference, or when she's in the bedroom on the phone talking to her sponsees, or when I'm in my little prayer room talking to my sponsees. Or I like to go to the gym really early in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning I'm in the gym, and Marion's home. We able to do that without checking the cell phone or looking out the window when they're coming home. It's a cool freedom that we're able to have because it allows us to really appreciate our time together. I really got to thank really AA and God for this, because this I can never do on my own. I have a bad picker. Throughout my whole life, I always, put 100 women in the room. 99 are well-to-do, educated, spiritually fit, and one has one day back. I'm in love. So my picker hasn't been good my whole life. But I thank God for sponsorship and writing inventory and outside help with therapy to find out that the problem was in me and not in those people. To do some healing. And instead of operating out of a wounded place, operating out of a more spiritual place. One that has some dignity, one that has some integrity, because the soul always knows where to go, what to say, what to do, and how to be. The thing is, I got to get unhooked from this. So when we're okay together, I'm not looking through the mind. And I'm not hearing through the mind. And it's vulnerable. Sometimes it gets scary when you're sharing your innermost self to the most important person in my life, Marion. And yet there's that thing, be careful here, she's going to think less of you. And she has never thought less of me, nor I of her. We work together. We're together a lot. And for some folks that won't work. But I can't fathom it any other way. Having a partner in life to go through the rough spots and to embrace the good ones. One of my favorite things to do, and this was actually brought to my attention. Sometimes we'll pray together. Sometimes we pray separate. But what would happen, it was just organically happen, that when Marion's praying in the bedroom, rosary beads, we're Catholics and we do all this stuff, and we come back out and we have our first cup of coffee together. Marion calls it as Pete sees it at that point in the morning. But we'll talk about, like, God just gave me something. And we'll talk about what transpired in prayer or meditation. So before we get dressed and get out the door, every morning, we sit on the couch after prayer, meditation, whether we did it together or separately, and talk about if God gave us anything, some insight, how to proceed through the day. The business I'm in is Looney Tune business, it's treatment center, it's bizarro land. So we really need to get some spiritual muscles before we head out the door. And so we just talk about this stuff. And for me, it's one of the most intimate moments of my day. I never realized I struck gold. It was brought to my attention. I said, you're right. This is the coolest thing, that we get to it. No interruption, no phone, no TV, no nothing. Just her and I in our first cup of coffee right after prayer and meditation, which means the field is really ripe at that point. And we can talk about that stuff. Sometimes we'll even talk some of these dreams we have. We have a Christian book that will give us some insight into some of the dreams we have. Point being, we get a good half hour, 45 minutes, just me and Marion time, right after prayer and meditation. So that allows us now to go out there into this crazy world, this problematic world, this up and down world that makes absolutely no sense, and try to do this shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. My biggest treat is when we get to a conference and we're going to go travel some. We love road trips together. I mean, this is unbelievable. That there was a time I couldn't do this, but we've driven from Boca Raton to Jacksonville when we're up there. It's about a 5-hour drive. We didn't fight once on the way. This is like discovering plutonium. I mean, this is unbelievable that we were able to like put on the Grateful Dead and hang out for 5 hours, you know. And I'm going to give it to Marion, but and I don't want to get, as Linda said, sappy. But I'm a better man, a better AA member, a better Catholic, just better overall since I met Marion. I mean, I learn a lot by what she does. I just watch her raising three kids and having 8 grandchildren. I watch the interaction. So much so, I'm so impressed by it that one day, you know, sometimes Marion's insecure about if she's doing the right thing. I said, you're just a great mom. I didn't grow up with him. My mom split when she was 14. She died. So I kind of feed off of that. It's just really cool to watch. So Marion has a favorite phrase of hers is a woman of grace and dignity. And so with that, I'll give you Marion.
I'm marrying an alcoholic, and of course I'm emotional, but I first of all, I'm just undone to even be sitting up here. I have benefited off I was telling Jimmy this earlier. Being partnered with Peter, I have benefited from the Jersey Shore Roundup with my dear, dear, dear friends, Jimmy and Maribeth, for years. And I've got to kick back and not have to do a lot. And it's like, oh, crap, I got responsibility this time. I don't get to go take my token nap or anything. And I wanted to say this so strong because such magic has happened in this room for me personally in my recovery, in my life. And I want to say, thank you for so many of you that helped raise this man to prepare him to be with me. Because I look around this room and I see so many relationships of people that have welcomed me with open arms. And that's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, but that is what you specifically has done for me. And I remember sitting at a diner with Jimmy and he was interviewing me. He was like, you're going to be with Pete. And he was just, question after question. You know, I was a traveling musician. I had my own band at the time, and I had a hoop ring, or no, not a hoop, but just a little diamond in my nose. And, you know, I got one tattoo. And he's like, you know, what's your intentions with Pete? And, you know, and he wasn't the only one. Freddie was doing it. You know, they were also, what do you think of her? You know, and these guys, all of them. Like, it was not going to happen. And I'm going to tell you, I personally, I don't come from a place where a man treats you with respect and honor and dignity. I come from a place of, if anybody's heard my story, and I'll share in a very general way, I come from a place of abuse and neglect. And I come from a place of a divorce in 2004 where I got out with my life. With 3 children and already some grandkids on the docket, and the loss of a little 3-month-old baby, and lots of drug alcoholism and all that with my partner. And when I came to you guys, I just talked to my sponsor before I got here. I called her at 7 o'clock this morning. I was out on the boards, and it's like, how am I going to go walk in the Jersey Shore boards that I love with Jim and Maribeth? And they weren't there this morning. They're in trouble. But she goes, I called Polly, and she was on the phone with someone else, and she just called me before this. She goes, honey, I just think it's perfect that you get... I'm like, following Bob and Linda, and how the hell am I going to do that? And, oh my God, I brought one dress. I guess you're wearing it, you know. And I think that that's totally perfect, because one of Jimmy's things, he always likes to bring your best wardrobe, you know, whatever. And she just, her thing, and then I think, because I think like an alcoholic, I certainly qualify. You know, I look around the room and all these married couples and people that we've gotten to know over the years. Seriously, from the bottom of this girl's heart, this woman's heart, I thank you so much. I mean, if I was ever could communicate how that feels in my heart, you know, I came from the Pacific Northwest, from where I was, and here, so Polly said this. Oh, I'm losing track. So Polly said, just tell them what God has done in the center of your relationship. And I'm telling you, even down to the very first meeting of inches and seconds, I was on a bike ride with my big sister for the American Cancers for Breast Awareness in Whatcom County, and where I come from. And I had a gig that night, and my band was going to play, and this dude was coming to speak at my home group, and I wasn't going to go. I was riding this bike with my sister and bawling my eyes out, and I was bawling my eyes out to my sister, when do I ever get to have what you have? And I went to the stupid potluck, and the only reason I went to the stupid potluck is because I made this commitment to bring a half a case of Diet Coke. And I'm in my Uggs, and I'm in my Henley, and I got no makeup, and I walk in the door, and there he was. And that same night, which the gig I wasn't even going to go to listen to him speak, because I had a gig at 9:00. But then I met him. And so the plan changed. But what was hilarious was I had all these sponsees in the room. And we just start talking casually in the coffee room. I'm 20 years sober, mind you. And I'm like embarrassed to be talking to him casually with my sponsees there. Like they're going to think I'm 13th stepping him. And I'm 20 years sober, you know. So anyway, fast forward in inches and seconds, and how God has done this in our life is, you know, to move 3,000 miles away. And, you know, Linda, what you said earlier about, you know, raising those kids and alcoholism, and I've done the same thing with my children. And, you know, and Polly says, it's time for you to have a life, Marion, and maybe God needed to move you that far away that so you'd keep your hands off of their life. And I can tell you today, those kids, you know, back in my drinking days, after my son died and my mom, that a year before I got sober, you know, I lost a child in January of 1987, and my mom in August of 1987. And I was bottoming out, and I was bottoming out bad. And God came in, and saved me in that time, you know. And I always thought about how hard it was to be a mom, to lose a baby of crib death, and how hard it was for me. But it took a long time until I got sobered up, how hard it had to be for those 3 little kids to lose their brother. You know, they were 4, 5, and 6 years old. My God, their innocence was just snatched away from them. And, you know, it's taken a lot of years, and it's a lot of tears. And my children are 41 and 40 and 39 years old. They're stair steps. Brandon, Jake, and Jess make them famous in AA. Because they're definitely qualifying, and you guys keep doing the work, because they're working out their process. But they're fine human beings, and I'm closer to them 3,000 miles away than I've ever been to them when they were in my backyard. And the second they heard of April 9th being the wedding date, they were on the phone. You know, 5 years ago when we got engaged, they wouldn't have been able to, you know, my son's a blue-collar worker. My other one, you know, sells stuff in California legally now. Legally. And my daughter is a single mom who kind of took the same path I did in my life, and she's got herself off of public housing and food stamps into being an executive in a soap making company. And we're closer than we've ever been, but those kids all bought their tickets to come to Florida 5 months from now to see me get married to him. And when, when all the prayers were happening and I was moving and we were moving, and I had a lot of conversations with God. How do I do this? How do I leave everything I've ever known? And one of the things that came in meditation, and I'm going to say this to you, is this is what I feel in my heart, and I know what God spoke to my heart, was these words. It's not going to be easy. Well, thanks, God. When you hear it's not going to be easy in meditation, but isn't that what life is? That it isn't always easy? Isn't that what relationships about? That it isn't always easy? Isn't this about the way we walk this road of recovery? That it's not always easy, but is it worth it? Oh my God, is it worth it? I have, Leslie and I were sitting next to each other at dinner last night, and coming into a place. I hope I'm not talking too long, and then you can wrap it. But anyway, next week I'm coming up on 32 years sober, and 61 years old. Do the math, right? And we're soul sisters at that age, raising those kids and the boys and the football games and Cheryl and I wouldn't take back a minute or a year of it where it just feels like my relationships with some of these gorgeous, beautiful women in this room right now, that we don't get together and go, oh, does this, like it used to be, like, does this make my butt look big? It's like Leslie had something on her heart last night. She leans in. I was totally a nutbag last night, and I sat next to Mary Beth, and I'm like, oh my God, And Cheryl, those are the relationships, because that's what this is about. It's Don Pritz talks about. I was a name dropper, pretty good. And usually I botch that. I'll say like Bill Dobson, and he always makes fun of me about that. But he said that was one of the biggest testimonies to that. What gave us our credibility in Alcoholics Anonymous was the restoration of families. The restorations of families. And that's what proved to the world that we make this stuff. There were times I would go back to the Pacific Northwest, and I'd go to my daughter's house, and I remember one vacation he sent me out by myself because he had to work, and he knew I had to go. And I spent this week at my daughter's house, and I cleaned, and I scrubbed, and I grouched out my life, and it was the whole 5 days. And the best part of all of it was the 5th day when I finally just went, what are you doing? And I made pancakes for all my grandchildren, and then it was like, I don't want to ever do that again. I want to accept them and love them for exactly where they are. I want to be, Kelly Ripa, of all people, said, God bless Kelly Ripa, but she said, because I was always trying to make up for being the crappy mom and stuff, and so it was just, oh, it's okay. And she goes, no, I'm their mother. I still get to tell them. I want to tell them the truth, and Pete will hear it. I had a thing with my daughter the other day, and I was just like, am I off with this? And he's like, no, you're her mother. Tell her, And that's a really cool thing. It's a really cool thing to be, I don't need to be their best friend. I need to walk around, and my daughter's my best friend. No, she's my daughter. And I love them and I adore them. But back to Peter and other relationships.
The longer I'm sober, and I think the older I'm getting, it just kind of downloaded a few years ago that this journey in recovery that God has put me on, is about relationships, the importance of relationships, cleaning up old scrapes, and be able to take a positive risk and tell someone you love them even though they may not come back at you. It's really easy to give a cold shoulder to someone that you know doesn't like you, but where does that get me? It's not how God would want me to live. And although, I'm talking to Joe right now, I might not be here tomorrow. God might call me home, or Joe might get called home tomorrow. And I never want to say, I wish I would have told them I love them. Because life is so fleeting, and we're here for a breath, and we can spend so much time squander the hours that may have been worthwhile. We can spend so much time trying to get what I think I deserve to be happy, and stepping all over someone in the process to doing that, and then they're taken from your life and says, I never really sat with them and said, I love you. I never went for that walk on the beach. I never went down to the store and shared an ice cream cone with her. I don't want to ever do that. So I pray to God every morning to, let Him lead me rather than me leading me. And I would love to tell you I do that perfect, but I don't. And a number of years ago, we were both working at a place in South Florida. And as I said earlier, a lot of mental health, a lot of craziness in the business I'm in. And we're both running our respective programs. And I broke a cardinal rule, and that was taking work home. I always tell people that I'm training, never take work home. You're going to, but as a rule, don't take it home. And so we were up against it. And my former boss, bless his heart, became a tyrant. And it was just a really difficult time. We would come home and be completely depleted with 1 8-hour day's work, wondering if we're going to have jobs the following week. And Marion was sharing something she was doing with her women's program. And I didn't like it. In a sense, on paper, Marion worked for me. I was the director. I didn't like it. And what I did was I let her know I didn't like it. And it wasn't, honey, I don't think we should do that. I barked. I barked loud. And I'll never forget, we were standing between the living room and the bedroom, the doorway. And I never forget her reaction when I barked at her. She's 5'1". I'm almost 6 feet tall. Her eyes and her body got tight. And I realized I'm being a bully, and I'm scaring someone who trusts me, who's supposed to feel safe around me. And I was reliving my childhood growing up watching my mom and dad. And I swore I'd never do that again. I apologized to her. But apologies are cheap. A lot of times apologies just let me off the hook, so we can go back to play nice again. And I realized that I just caused an internal wound on something that appeared to be external. I need to do something about this. And the only thing I could do is, okay, God, I just scared someone. And that's not good. That's not fair. That's not okay. We have a thing in our house, my favorite quote, as for me and my house, we choose to serve the Lord. My favorite quote out of Scripture. It's up on the wall. I guess I stopped reading that particular day. I barked for about 10 seconds. I'm not lying to you. And it just brought back a lot of bad stuff for me. And I'm happy to report to you, we've disagreed on work things. We've disagreed on a lot of things. But I don't talk like that to her because I would never talk to any of you like that. It's kind of like, Tommy will call me and say, listen, can we go to New Jersey on a 12-step call at 2 o'clock in the morning? Sure, Tommy, I'll be there. Can you help me break down this room? Sure, I'll break down the room. Can we help me? Yeah, absolutely, but can I be of service in my own home? You do it, I'm too tired. And I would treat everyone here, hopefully I do that with respect and honor and dignity, and treat women the way I believe they should be treated, kind and gentle. But in my house, I have the right now to bark at her. That's not okay. I'm happy to report to you, thank you God, I haven't done that. That doesn't make me better or perfect. It just maybe take a look at a glaring part of me that I didn't want to look at, and circumstances brought it to the surface. I said, oh boy, that guy from Brooklyn's still floating around and thinks it's okay to talk that way. That's not okay. In my prayers in the morning, I'm real mindful of going to God. Big Book says we had to quit playing God, didn't work, and I asked God to show me how not to play His role and be prideful. I put myself in place of God, and if I'm playing God, that means, I own her, and that's not what this is about. Lots of times, Marion talked about her children. Sometimes there's stuff going on in my family, and it's unbelievable how powerful the extended family can be in this two-person relationship. How can get right in there and start to have an impact? Well, your in-laws or my in-law, and what the kids are doing, I disagree with. My dad's doing, I disagree with. She disagrees with. And how quickly that can fall in. So our common welfare comes first. What are we doing as a team? And one of the things we do a lot of is talk. We communicate a lot with a lot of transparency. So when those thunderbolts hit, whether it's on my side of the family, her side of the family, or with work, we're able to communicate. And one of the things we always do is pray. I seem to have been surrounded since I was brought into the business I'm in. By one of this gentleman, Vince D. He actually brought me into this business. I was about 2 years sober. And it seems to be God has a sense of humor, but wherever I've worked and people I've been around always seem to be financially well off. And as I said a little while ago, I almost didn't make my rent a couple of years ago. And it's almost like God has a sense of humor about maybe keeping me right-sized. And that has been a temptation to bring home and just lay all over her. When am I going to get my chance? When am I going to grab the brass ring? Look how hard I work. It goes on and on. But instead of barking that, Marion reads me pretty good, and she'll say, "What's going on?" And right away I say, "Nothing."
Don't therapize me.
Please don't therapize me. I'm okay. Now, as a guy, when she says nothing, there is something. But we're able to talk it out. And, we have sponsors, and we have inventory, and we have a God to pray to. Again, I don't do any of this perfect. It's important for me. I know this sounds kind of silly, but it's back to that relationship. Sometimes I'll just slip a note in Marion's pocketbook about how I feel for no reason. And sometimes Marion will come home from the store and she bought me something for no reason. Sometimes, when you shower, you can write in the steamy shower. Sometimes I'll sneak in the bathroom and write something on there. It's goofy, but it makes it fun. Because one day, if I live to be 90 years old or 80 years old, and I can't get around like I used to, I would really like for her and I to kick back and say, we had a good time. It was fun. Both know we can't get around anymore, but it's not like what a long, horrible time I had with you, but it was fun. Where did all the years go? It was a waste, that kind of stuff. I know a lot of people in relationships who are in relationships because they're in a relationship. To death do us part, and they're miserable. I wouldn't want that to happen. And if, I get called home, I would like Marion to say, she had fun with me. And he was a good man and not a dirtbag. So God has given me some things to take a look at and some gifts to bring to the table. I'd be falsely humble if I didn't say it. Sometimes I'm overly sensitive and overly protective. I have a habit of getting in front of every bullet that comes at Marion. If someone's speaking harsh to her, I want to get in there. I want to protect her from everything that's uncomfortable, but that kind of doesn't allow her to grow. And it's very difficult for me to just sit back and let it unfold and watch how well she can take care of herself. So I make lots of mistakes. But my intent is I get into the batter's box and try to get a base hit every day. That's my intent. I'm really happy that I'm with someone who loves the Lord as much as I do, and tries to take that into all our affairs as much as I do. We both fall short. And I'm just, I really don't know where else to go with this, guys. I hope I was transparent enough and let you in on a little bit of what we do. And you take away.
Oh, okay. So, I just want to say in closing that there's something that I've lived by for a long time. I had this old timer in my home group. He said, you know, I'm going to use your line 3 times, and after that, it's mine. You know, but I'm a really true believer in, and we were talking to Ian about this yesterday too. Is that, you know, in our homes, occupations, and affairs, and I really believe this. We're as sober as we are at home. I'm as sober as I am when nobody's looking. Am I treating him with respect? Is he treating me with respect? I love that, treating them like a newcomer or treating them like a sponsee. That is like, boom, our kids, right? And so I know there's a ton of people, because this is where you're from, that have benefited from you and their sobriety here. I spent, you know, my first 20 years of my sobriety at the Northwest group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Bellingham, Washington, and when I met this man and got up here, it's like what our book talks about, being rocketed into the undimensional living that I beyond my wildest dreams, and it really has happened, because I'm lucky enough at times when he's down, we're 2 drunks living together, 2 recovered alcoholics living together. When I can't get, you know, the other day when I had it immediately and my sponsor wasn't available, and my sponsor went from my one sponsor to my next immediately, and my next immediately didn't answer, and then it was like, hey, Pete, what do I do? You know, so the cool thing is being able to point things back to where this is in my recovery, to point this back to, am I saying something out of turn, or if I'm saying... Because, man, that was a day with my daughter where I had to really practice pause, but then also take it into a place of those that wait on the Lord will mount up, you know? And that waiting is such a big deal in, you know, restraint of tongue, practicing that stuff, me coming from the place I did in relationships that this is going to go wrong, and if a voice gets raised that I'm in danger. And my old Subaru, I was always ready to, you know, if the voice even comes up a little bit, it's like I'm out the door. You know, as long as I got the keys in my hand and a half a tank of gas, I'm going to be okay. And that's not the way it's ever been with him. And he's had to dance around a lot of my old broken stuff. And I can tell you today that I'm well loved, and to be with somebody that I respect and love and honors me. So practicing these principles in all our affairs. That's what I have. We're going to do a greeting line.